It's time for a reality check.
We're here to deconstruct health and fitness trends and provide tangible advice so you can become 1% better with each choice starting today. Welcome back to Reality Check. We are your hosts, Jess and Jill, and today we want to talk about what it actually means to lift heavy in the gym. I know that we talk to obviously hundreds and hundreds of women, and everyone always says, well, I do lift weights already. And then when we dig deeper, it's like they go to Orange Theory or they do Beachbody or what, all of these different variations. And it's, we want to be clear that just the use of dumbbells is not actually lifting heavy or progressive overload. It's relative to each person, but we want to give you kind of the thought process of how to determine what lifting heavy means for you so that you can actually get the most out of your results in the gym. Now, there are very technical terms that can be used when you're discussing this, but typically this within our realm and our clientele, we don't use that because most people just need to make their lifts feel hard, right? At the end of the day. If you're a more advanced lifter, there's definitely more technical ways to approach it so that because once your body has these adaptations in place, you do have to be a lot more intentional with your lifts. Whereas if you're a newbie, just lifting, anything is really a new adaptation, right? So it's a little bit, you don't have to be as nuanced with it, but it is very, very easy to go to the gym and go through the motions, even for somebody who is an advanced lifter. I track all of my lifts and all of my weights, and it doesn't mean you have to track everything, but for me, I want every lift to count.
For years.
I want to be intentional. Yeah. So for me, I'm like, I need to remember that I did 12 reps of 80 and that it got a little hard on those last 3 reps last week so that I know where to start. But I can go through my personal thought process too with how I approach my weights to ensure I'm always progressing. But my point of saying that is that I would standard just say more than 90% of the time, you can probably lift more than you even think that you can. We are our own worst enemy when it comes to that and challenging ourselves. So of course, it's a natural human instinct to avoid harder things. So this is kind of the thought process of how to determine what that looks like to get the most out of your workouts, to actually see progress.
Yeah. And like, what does heavy actually mean, right? When we say lift heavy. So, first and foremost, like Jill kind of touched on this, if you are currently not exercising, any resistance is going to be a new adaptation for your body. Okay. The first time I ever followed a resistance training program or like a real exercise program, it was in like, I don't know, some teen magazine. And it was like your summer to fitness or something. And it was like, I don't know, 20 walking lunges and body weight squats. And I was literally doing this in my bedroom growing up in high school. But I was doing it consistent for 3 days a week. And guess what? In those 3 months, I got the most fit I had ever been using just like a pair of 12-pound dumbbells and my body weight. It's because my body had never done actual resistance training before, right? I was doing 3 sets of 10 of all these moves 3 times a week, right? At a certain point, your body adapts and that thing will stop working and you have to progress. So the same thing often happens with people when they do fitness classes and they think like, no, I know it works because my body changes. Okay, well, it changes for the first couple months. And then you see these women who are going to these classes year in and year out and nothing changes, right? And again, if you're going for the intent of enjoying yourself and enjoying exercise and getting fun movement, please keep going. If you are going with the intention of this is going to help me lose weight or this is going to help me get my bathing suit body or whatever women think when they go into those classes, that is not the outcome that tends to happen because your body adapts. And then at some point, now you're not being strategic. You're not measuring progression. You're just doing the same thing you've always done at a certain point, right? So again, I think there's a lot of value socially to these classes. I think there's a lot of value to heart health just to get moving, and exercise is good, right? But when it comes to strategically changing your physique, you need to lift heavy and you need to lift with progression. So step 1, consistency matters more than anything, right? Can we do some form of resistance training 2 or 3 times a week as a starting point consistently? Step 2 is, okay, how are we going to measure what is hard for you, right? So I always tell everybody, this is a little caveat, my asterisks above everything I'm about to say. I always say, hey guys, form first. We do Zoom form consultations with every single client. I was an in-person trainer before I ever got online. It's very important to me that I'm helping give people appropriate cues. Once we know a person is moving safely, at that point, we are either having them aim for RPE, so rate of perceived exertion, where they're rating how hard I say, how hard did that set feel? Not the workout, right? I don't care how high your heart rate is. I don't care how many calories your Apple Watch says you burn, but how hard was that set? Could you have done another rep or two? Or I give them a rep range, okay? And I say, let your rep range guide how heavy you ought to go, right? So for a lot of the exercises, the way that I tend to program, if I say aim for 8 to 10 reps and you get to 10 and you're like, oh, I could keep going, 11, 12, 13. You were going way too light, right? Like I want you to be challenged at 10. And then if you can keep going, cool. If you can get 11 or 12, write down 12 and you better be going heavier for the next set. In the same way, if it says 8 to 10 and you can only get 6 or 7, cool, right? 6 times whatever that weight was, and now drop your weight and go a little bit lighter because the rep range is guiding how heavy you are going. That's how I
also challenge doesn't mean like out of breath. Challenge is like you are going to lose good form and can't
do another one.
Push out. Yeah.
Not it feels hard. It's I can't get another rep within that rep range. And again, I'm giving all these little caveats. We program individually for everybody. Personally, especially because I'm not in person with these people, I tend to, the lowest rep range I'll ever tend to program is maybe like a 5x5, like maybe 3 to 5 reps for somebody who's like an advanced lifter. Most of the time we're working somewhere in the 8 to 15 rep range. I say that to say, what's the worst that happens, right? If you try to go heavier and you can only get 4 or 5 reps, cool. You're not going to injure yourself, right? I'm never having my clients do like a 1 rep max test or something like that. The risk outweighs the reward in my mind when we are not in person with them, right? So again, what is the worst that can happen, right? If I have you aiming for 8 reps and you can only get 4, wow, you end up finding out what your actual limits are. And most of the time, women end up texting me like, I can't believe how heavy I just did it. And they're so proud of themselves. And then they're like, I think I can progress from that. I think next week I can aim for 5 or 6, right? So you end up really being able to test your own boundaries and your own limits, which translates over to so many other areas of confidence in life, realizing like you can do hard things. But how cool is it in the way that it changes your physique? Because instantly your body is not used to that type of stimulus on your muscles. Boom. Now we're adding a thing that you're ready to adapt to. I'm going off our notes here, but another thing is your body's going to adapt best to the thing you haven't been doing, right? Because it's adapted to whatever inputs you give it. So if you are someone who has been doing body pump classes or group classes or whatever, the tendency in those classes is, okay, I'm working through a song, right? Or I'm working through 40 seconds of this move, right? You're doing lots and lots of reps. So your weight has to be lower in order to sustain that amount of reps. You would probably yield really excellent results following a program where you have to lift way heavier for only like 6 to 8 reps. Flip it on its head, right? I tend to always train in a lower rep range because I think it's fun to test myself. My body would probably do really well in a higher, like 15 to 20 rep range. Now that sounds pretty high for most women. Like most women, I think would do better with the opposite because they tend to start in the other direction. But again, for somebody who has been lifting for a long time, anywhere between like 3 and 20 reps can be effective. We just want to be strategic within it.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say too that generally, like, we're programming with this like rule of 2, right? With the last 2 reps being hard to complete with clients. Like that's really initially, if anyone's like, where do I start? That's typically the advice I'm going to give. Now there's also there's nuance to that, right? Because it depends obviously on the weights that somebody has access to in their environment, right? If you're working on at home and you only have 10-pound dumbbells, well, the odds are that let's say that is the appropriate weight for you now, but probably within the month of you training consistently, those 10 pounds aren't going to be enough for you to progressively overload. So we actually did do an episode on all of the different ways to progressively overload beyond just adding actual load and weight to your reps. However, if you're in your first couple years of lifting, this is really what we want. Obviously, this episode is specifically on the load that you're lifting. But again, if you're more advanced or you have limited access to weights, that's a great episode to refer to outside of this. The rule of two is still something that I always carry with me. Really, no matter what rep range or anything that you're training in, I always push until my last 2 reps are hard. And to Jess's point, if I'm in like an 8 to 12 rep range, it's super easy for me to be like, all right, dude, realistically, you could have gotten another 4 or 5 reps out of that. Like, you need to go up. So then I'm like, cool, that was my warm up. Now I'm going to do 3 sets.
Well, and also like she's saying my last 2 reps are really hard, knowing what failure feels like, right? We actually know when am I going to actually fail? Most women do not know that until they actually try it. So push yourself until you physically can't get another rep. Okay, now you know what that number is, right? And then the goal is to build from there week over week in either reps or weight or range of motion or form, right? In one of those 3 ways, those are very simple ways to progressively overload.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to say too. It's like this month I have programmed like pause hamstring curls. So instead of me just doing 12 to 15 reps of hamstring curls, I'm pausing halfway through the rep and holding. And the other thing that I wanted to mention when you're lifting heavy is how intentional each rep is when you're determining the weight, because I can fly through a set of something and speed through those reps, half-ass it realistically with my form. And I can lift way heavier, but if I slow down my rep and I am actually like connecting with this muscle group and being very intentional, my weight is likely going to drop on what I can complete in that rep range. And that's a good thing. Those
it's actually more effective.
So much more effective and impactful. So how heavy should I lift isn't just, all right, bro it up and go like sling the heaviest dumbbell you can find. Like Jess said, your form should be there, but also your reps, like
controlled.
When clients send me form videos, I would say most videos that I receive in the first couple of weeks of training, I am like, holy shit, slow down. And the effectiveness of the next time they send me a video, I'm like, slow down and send me this lift again next week. They are like, holy shit, that was way harder. I'm like, yeah, that's the difference between like really lifting intentionally. So that's the other thing when you're determining your weight. I know we're throwing all these different nuances, but I think it's so critical to determining the effectiveness of your workout is form should be there. Your every rep should be intentional, and you should be really, really pushing yourself. It's funny when I would hear people like screaming in the gym. I don't think that's fully necessary, but like when you really lift to failure and push yourself, you start to look at that a little differently because you're like, yeah, like that person's really lifting heavy. Obviously that can be obnoxious, but I'm just giving some context of how hard that truly should be.
I always tell clients, like, make every rep and every set hard, right? I could make that rep harder by getting deeper in that squat. I could make the rep harder by going slower in the squat, by thinking about my glutes at the bottom and bracing and then going back up, right? Make every rep challenging and then make every set challenging. That's more important than, oh, I'm out of breath. This whole workout felt hard. A lot of times people who have come from those high intensity settings, they come to us and they're like, these workouts feel too easy. And I'm like, all right, then we're not focusing on the right thing, right? We want to make every set hard to the point that you're like, I can't get another deadlift rep in. But at the end of the workout, you're not going to feel, you might feel systemic fatigue, but you're not going to feel, oh, I'm so out of breath. Like, we're taking 2-minute rests between each set. We're not rushing to the next thing and supersetting everything. You don't need to for really effective outcomes.
Yeah. And then with your form, like an example, let's say you're doing like barbell rows, right? We get really like nitpicky when it comes to form of different movements. But if, let's say a client sends me her barbell row and her biceps are like fully taking over, she cannot row or curl with her bicep nearly as much as you can actually pull and execute a rep of a barbell row with your back and the intended muscles. You are limiting yourself immensely with improper form in every scenario. And I'm just giving you one of them because you are not recruiting the muscles. You are not to mention not moving safely. So you're putting yourself at risk of injury, which whole nother fish to fry if that sets you back.
I see this all the time with push-ups. With
Yes.
women in these group classes, I'm just seeing through the glass, push-ups. Oh, we're doing half of a rep and our traps are engaged and shrugged shoulders and
Their
they're feeling
core
it in
isn't
their
tight, their
arms and their
butt's in the air.
shoulders.
Yeah.
They're not expanding and feeling it through the chest at all, which is such a bigger muscle group. You're going to get more bang for your buck metabolically if we can really train our big muscle groups versus hammering these small little arm muscles
Calf
and
reps
calves and
yeah.
abs, right? You're going
Yeah.
to actually get more, which obviously that's a topic for another day. Go to our more effective workout
Yeah.
programming episodes. But yeah, they're doing these half-assed things and then they end up tense in their neck and they're not actually using those big muscle groups that they ought to. So
Like in proper form, I promise you will immensely limit the physical and external result that you want and what you get out of
absolutely.
your workouts
It
in the
will
gym. It is
actually,
crucial.
and it'll sometimes create. I want to backtrack. We're talking to you guys about physique change because that's what our most of our clients want to hear. There's the value of building muscle is not just changing your looks. Like, is that a fun outcome? Absolutely. But better bone density so you don't get osteoporosis when you're old. Better longevity. When you fall and break a hip, you will live longer in a hospital someday. Better hormone health when you enter menopause. Better insulin sensitivity so you don't get type 2 diabetes or Alzheimer's. Like, there's so many benefits to building muscle. And then the metabolic benefits of the more muscle you carry around, the more calories you burn all the time. That makes keeping off fat so much easier and you get to enjoy food. There's so many fun benefits to building muscle. So I say that now also because I think, again, a lot of people are like, oh, I don't like this style of workout. It's boring. Okay, you don't have to do it as your only form of workout. Lift like this 2 days a week or 3 days a week, and then do your class 1 day a week for your social time, right? It doesn't have to be all or nothing. However, if you want those outcomes, this is the best. This is the most direct route to get there. So yeah, I kind of wanted to just backtrack on that as we were talking about physique. I interrupted myself. There was something else physique wise that I wanted to. I might come back to that point.
That's okay. The other thing I was going to say, physique wise, also is that I think we've gotten over this a little bit because the value of strength training is more popular than it used to be now. So like when we talk to women, especially menopausal women, they're like, I know I should be lifting. I've read that this is really important, whatever. But so I think this belief has, gone away a little bit, but it certainly still lingers where women think that they are going to get bulky if they lift heavy. And I also wanted to be clear that Jess and I have been lifting for a long time, and while we have certainly both lived through
like 15 years,
lives,
15 years. This is not like 2 years. It's like a long time. And obviously, there's seasons of life, right? After pregnancy, I had to start light again. That's now heavy for me, right? But then I got back up to my maxes, right? But yes, continue. 10 to 15 years each.
Yeah. So I was just going to say the point is that like, in your head, you're thinking, I'm going to lift heavy, and building muscle for women is not easy, right? It's difficult. You have to eat enough food, eat enough protein, lift with good form, right? We've given you all of these nuances, that come with that. However, you're not just going to wake up really big and bulky one day. And I think that's important to understand. Let's say, I'll even give you a devil's advocate scenario. Let's say you are lifting, every scenario is perfect in this, and you are building muscle at a rapid pace. You can also shift gears at any point and be like, okay, I'm happy with this, right? And wean back and not push the weight as much and progress in other ways and challenge yourself in other ways. But the odds that happens is like slim to none.
Yeah, I would like to say what I say to clients when they tell me this, because I know some of our clients are listening to this.
I already know what you're going to say.
You don't get it. I gain muscle so quick in my legs. My legs just get so bulky, and I'm like, let's talk about it and let's look at the actual data, right? Well, during all this time that we've been tracking your calories, your legs haven't gotten bigger in inches. So what leads you to believe this? Oh, well, back in the day when anytime I lifted, I bulked up. Okay, that's probably just because you were overeating and not realizing.
Yeah, you barbell squat 115 pounds. I promise you are not growing quads at a rapid pace.
No, what's happening in that case, if you genuinely are increasing in inches, which is excess body fat, right? What's happening there is that you are likely hungrier because you're training hard and you're not tracking your intake, and you're probably just over consuming calories, to be honest with you. That's what's happening. and
The
or
other scenario where maybe you aren't doing
burning
that,
yourself.
yeah, I was
Go
going to say
ahead.
when clients are reverse dieting with us, there is a scenario with certain clients that come in and everyone's body responds to this like muscle building phase differently, right? Where we are like slowly adding calories and manipulating these different variables and getting their health in a good place. There are clients that we see maintain the same weight but lose a ton of inches, right? During that scenario. Cool. But there are also clients who maintain the same weight, maintain the same inches, and maybe their weight even creeps up a couple of pounds. And they are like, oh my God, I'm getting fatter in this phase. This is horrible. And we're like, hold on a second.
You're
The point of
maintaining
this
inches.
phase, yeah, the point of this phase isn't to add body fat, and you're not, but you are adding muscle without losing body fat. So to you, you feel like I'm big, I'm bulky, I'm getting fatter because you're not seeing right now the muscle that you're building because
And then
you haven't gotten there yet.
when we trim the body fat down that's on top, whoa, now this new sculpted toned version of me exists that I didn't realize I was building underneath because I just got
Yes.
uncomfortable with
And now when
what
you
was
lose
there.
weight for the 25th time in your life, this time your physique looks totally different because you did get a little uncomfortable in this muscle building phase, actually build muscle this time versus
Underneath, though, the muscle
Right.
wasn't the problem. The excess
Right.
body fat on top was still the problem. We just have to tackle them one at a time.
Yeah. So you went through this phase for the first time in your life.
Yeah.
Then you go back into a deficit and lose body fat. And you're like, oh, cool. Your physique looks even better, which is why we also move through seasons personally with ourselves, with clients, with everyone, where right now I am eating so much food because
We're
I want to build
intentionally
muscle.
gaining
Yeah.
muscle weight to gain muscle. However,
Yeah.
we're monitoring inches to make sure that we're not doing some nutso bodybuilder
So
bulk.
anyway, I
right?
just wanted to clear up the nuance of I get bulky if I lift heavy because
I
don't
love
want
that.
anyone to listen to this episode.
And I think that there's so much bad information about, like, there's a industry in making women scared because if you lift light or if you do Pilates, you'll be toned, you'll get long, lean muscle. That is impossible. There's muscle, there's fat tissue. There are two types of tissue in your body. There's not long, lean muscle and then bulky muscle. So anytime you hear that, please just like logic yourself out of it. It's physically like that's not a thing. And you are being targeted by advertising for these different types of programs. If your body responds well to one of those things, great. At some point, it's going to adapt just like anything else that we just talked about.
Beautiful. Well said.
Okay.
I think also like the fear. What's that?
Go ahead.
I was just saying the fear of injury too. Especially, I can think of a client, I think she was that worked with you within the last couple of years. And she didn't work with you. Regardless, she came in and she said she only does machines because she doesn't want to get hurt. And I think that the fear of injury, especially if you've had a previous injury, I fully understand, which is why I do think working with a professional, if you have any of that, is so important because going over proper form, learning how the muscles work, learning what you need to support and strengthen around those muscles if you, or joints or whatever it is, like whatever the issue you had previously, so that you do feel confident. But it's also, you don't just need to go in the gym and jump back to your previous barbell squat weight, right? It's okay to go back, move through the movement well, feel good, build your confidence, and make sure your form is good, right? And do some mobility, do some other things to support that movement in healthy ways. And then you can progress again from there. So that was the other thing I wanted to talk
And if you're only to talk to any women who are listening who are in that boat of like, I just do machines because that's the only way I can push heavy weight. Great. But mix in full body movements because pushing heavy weight on a leg extension machine is not going to get you up and down from the toilet when you're old, right? You actually need to learn the skill of bracing your core to squat properly or bracing your core to deadlift so that you can hinge and pick something up as you get older, right? And again, if you're in your 20s or 30s right now, maybe if you're in your 30s, you're starting to feel the effects a little bit. But I feel like when we're young, we're like, I'll worry about that someday. Worry about building those skills now because if you stop using it, you lose it, right? Build those skills now and practice them, and then you'll be able to maintain that mobility throughout your entire life. If you're only sitting on a machine to push a lot of weights, that's great muscularly, right? Bodybuilding, you might look really good on a stage. It's not going to help you functionally so that you don't get injured, right? We actually need, I feel the same. I don't know about you. I'm sure it depends is always our answer, but lifting belts. I tend to not use lifting belts. I tend to not recommend them. I'm going to teach you how to brace your core because our core is our belt. Okay. And we're going to be able to do that safely. Range of motion and depth. I would rather us go lighter and train a deep range of motion to make the rep hard. Again, the rep's going to be so hard, you can't do one or two more. But I'd rather train that range of motion really well first, then add weight to it, because now you're able to get up and down with comfort in your normal life stuff when you're playing with your kids, right? So there's lots of ways to challenge to make the rep and make the set feel hard.
That's a great point. I love that. So in terms of like rep ranges, I want to kind of, I think you went through this a little bit, but I want to revisit just to kind of summarize, I guess. But with rep ranges, you're generally, I want to say you're probably going to be in like the 8 to 15 rep range typically, for the women who are listening to this. Men, women who are listening to this, whatever. If you do have limited equipment, let's say at home, your rep range, like one of the ways you can advance might be going into a little bit higher of a rep range, but that's generally going to take you into a more endurance-based type of program, the way that it's challenging and adapting your body. So typically with clients, I'm like, I love the setup you have. We're probably going to need heavier dumbbells at some point. Most of the time, you're not going to be training in like the 3 to 6 rep range. Now, I don't want to say never, but I always look at, and I didn't used to do this. I used to just hit 3 by 12 and call it good. I think training with a range is so important so that you can kind of like pyramid your reps, as Jess was explaining earlier, where like, okay, if you did 2 sets of 12 and you're on your 3rd set, you could probably increase the weight at that point.
To me, that's an indication that you are going too light.
Yeah.
If you could still get your highest rep range on your third set, then you've gone too light.
Yep. So I love training with a rep range, whether it's 8 to 10 or 8 to 12 or whatever I'm programming for a client. And then we kind of hit on rule of 2 that it should be hard. The way that I do it personally, okay, so what did I do today at the gym? I did Bulgarian split squats, I think. And, you know, if I'm holding a 30-pound dumbbell and I was in a rep range of 8 to 12 and I did 9 reps last time, I'm going to pick up that same dumbbell and I'm going to execute more than 9 reps if I can on my first set. And then I'm going to see if I can hold that higher rep range for all 3 sets. I've now progressed. If I can hold all 3, I'm going to make sure that I pyramid to the top of the rep range I'm in. Then when I do that, I know I can now increase my weight again. I am constantly looking at my previous lift and saying, what's the heaviest I did last time? That's where I'm going to start today. I even write how I think about notes.
I do the same thing. I have composition books of exercises back from like 2012. Like I track all my workouts. Now, every now and then, if I'm really having a tough time motivating myself to get to the gym, maybe I just go lift, right? But almost all my workouts I'm documenting. It's not that I'm always progressing heavier, but within a given programming phase, right? So most of our programming phases are going to be between 4 to 6 weeks of doing the same 3 or 4 workouts, all 4 or 6 weeks, because every single week we should be progressing. But I write such detailed notes where it's like, okay, I got 9, and in parentheses, I'm writing to myself, my form was kind of compromised on that last one, so I shouldn't go heavier next week, right? I need to perfect my form again before loading heavier. But same as Jill, if I start to see that I'm creeping towards the high end, awesome. Now it's time to bump the weight up again.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to point this out too. So I have a hack squat machine. I just had this conversation with a client recently, a hack squat machine in my gym, and they keep replacing equipment, which obviously I love, but the base weight for something like a hack squat can vary a ton. I put weight on that I put on at my old gym, and I was like, holy cow, I almost hurt myself, quite frankly. So I scaled it back. I did 1 rep. I didn't like push through whatever. So don't worry about other people too and how much you're lifting, because I used to be a big ego lifter. And I definitely put myself in compromising positions also. So I know this whole episode is like lift heavy. And I'm like, well, be careful, but, just don't lift with your ego, because that's obviously a way for things to backfire. But, I guarantee that you could probably, if you're listening to this right now, you could add at least 10 pounds to any of your lower body lifts the next time you go into the gym, and at least
Minimum.
5 pounds to every upper body. And that's being very, very reserved in my assumption.
Again, test yourself. And what's the worst thing that happens? You only get 5 reps. Okay, then go later.
Right.
Like I think sometimes I don't want to freak you guys out, right? But sometimes I'll share those charts that say like, okay, what's an optimal amount for people to be doing for the big lifts, for back squats, for deadlifts? So like my goal personally is to do twice my body weight in deadlifts, which is aggressive. Okay. But 1.5 times your body weight in a deadlift is actually pretty reasonable if you've been training, right? So if you've been training consistently for a year, that's a reasonable goal that you can actually someday get to. I know that sounds crazy. At least 1 times your body weight, you could back squat, right? Maybe 0.75 times your body weight for a bench press. Maybe 50% for an overhead press, right? I love to show clients those targets because for most women, they can't even fathom that that's possible for you. But and again, I'm talking, that would be like a 1 or 2 rep max. I'm not saying we're lifting that all the time. I'm just saying physically you are capable of way more than you think you're capable of. Get the form down first, get your range of motion nice and deep first, and then start pushing that weight and test yourself because you're capable of way more than you think you can.
Yeah, true that. And then the last thing that we'll touch on is your muscle soreness, your calories burned, your sweat. None of that is obviously relevant for the effectiveness of your workout. So same with like cardio, like people like want that like dopamine rush. You can peak your heart rate after a really hard set, and your heart rate is going up, right? Like you're still getting cardiovascular benefits through your lifts. It doesn't mean cardio is bad, but just make sure, like what we're sharing with you and tracking your weights and progressing effectively in that manner with good form and all of those things, you're going to get so much more out of those workouts from a health standpoint and from a physique standpoint than a HIIT class, right? And it doesn't mean HIIT is bad or that you don't get benefits from it, but in terms of the health benefits of like building and adding muscle, and strength training and the adaptations that come with that are so much more effective
and it's not overnight. It's not going to feel like, oh, that was such a hard workout. I'm sore every time. Like
you might not be super sweaty when you leave the gym.
Right. Effective does not mean it felt hard. Okay. Yeah. So you have to be consistent, stick to the same program for 4 to 8 weeks and progress within it. Track your weights, increase with time. If you're going through the motions just to hit a certain rep target and using the same weights over and over, your body will adapt and you're wasting your time.
Yeah. And then the other thing is too, with like an effective program, and again, why I think there's so much benefit in working with a trainer at least some point in your life. There are, when we build out a client's program, we're obviously thinking about the individual and their lifestyle and the length of the workout and the number of days per week. And then based on the number of days per week, we're like, okay, what should the split look like? Because I'm not going to do a body part split for somebody who works out 2 or 3 days a week, right? They're probably going to be full body. Then at that point, there's a certain number of sets per week that we are aiming for the client to have the adaptations that they're looking for. We're moving them through different planes. We're doing certain mobility. We're thinking about so many things when we build one program for one client. So again, lifting heavy is important, especially if you are new to lifting. If you are more advanced, again, I highly recommend, if you feel like you're checking the boxes in this episode, to listen to the episode that we did about all of the ways. I think it was 17 ways that we shared to progressively overload outside of just adding weight. That can be super beneficial. Like my husband right now is having some knee issues and he lifts heavy. Like this man is so intentional with progressive overload. And I'm like, dude, I've been telling you, you got to change it up. So he's been doing this for so long that like him adding more weight at his age just quite frankly doesn't make sense right now for the sake of his health. There's just no more benefit to him lifting heavy other than his ego. So for him, I'm like, hey, we got to do this in different ways. So he might practice like time under tension or a little bit more volume training for a little bit more functional and mobility. So I think that's important to understand the intention behind your lifts too, outside of lifting heavy. So
controlling your eccentric phase too, guys. Please don't just pick the weight up and drop it. If you can't control the eccentric part, the release of the weight, then it's too heavy for you. Okay. So you should be able to control the weight up and back down. But same, I've spent so much time dropping my weight lighter because before I thought it was heavy, 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 just to learn how to go deeper in my squat, to learn how to brace my core better in my squat and not have my butt tuck under, right? Then once you have that skill, man, you can progress so much heavier without injury. And it's so cool. It's really fun.
Yeah. So hopefully that was helpful in terms of how heavy to lift. But moral of the story is if you have good form and your reps are intentional, that you probably can lift so much heavier than you think you
lift
can.
heavier. Lift heavier, ladies.
Yep. That is all for this episode, and we will see you guys next time.